is connected. No, it's not. Bluetooth. Hello? Right on. Sweet. Having breakfast. Sorry. 6 eggs, cheese, salt, about a half a head of broccoli. That's good. You should get ceramic pans. Yep, worth the extra money. The yield you get per egg on one of those bastards. Incredible. Worth it. Plus to wash, spray handle, psh, clean off. It's great. I only put like a tablespoon of butter in the pan too. It's great. Mm. Unlock my watch. It's sort of a morning ritual. Hold it very dearly. Mm. It's gonna be a good day. See, it's 7:40 or 4:40, depending on where you are. What are we doing? I do not know. I have a strong conviction that anybody can change the world, or at least the country. So we're gonna try and do that slowly but surely. I have been writing down some ideas on a napkin because that's canon. That's that's a cliche. So any good idea is written down on a napkin or came from a napkin. But no, we got this is a little bit too big of an idea. It's very uh, you know, ambitious. But I think today we're gonna try and write a law. All right, we're gonna write a bill. But before then, there's 2 areas I want to focus on. This ambitious one is kind of focused on data and AI. They were speaking about it on the House floor in one of their committees Friday or Thursday. I'll pull it up. Hang on, let me pull it up for you. AI something Californication House floor. Anyways, they're talking about this. They're AI at Crossroads. It was Thursday. Yeah, because I remember reading this instead of doing work. Yeah, so maybe I'll just play this while I eat, because I haven't watched this yet. I was just reading part of it. 2 hours long. Okay, well, it's not going to take me 2 hours to eat eggs, but we'll see. Any desktop audio?
CEO of Directed Electronics, had an inherent inventory problem.
Page muted.
Inventory problem was that we had a few SKUs that sold well and we managed, and hundreds of SKUs that were constantly either out of or oversupply.
It said this going. Oh, maybe it's because I'm not monitoring.
Simply grown quickly, and
sorry about that.
There was a certain amount of inconsistency in what was being sold in a given month. So that bright young man took all of that inventory and the records and put it into SuperCalc,
what is my
a precursor to Microsoft Excel. Reduced our out of stock, increased our same day delivery, trimmed inventory to a level that actually saved us
so it's
over
outputting, but
a year
what is my
cost.
what does this thing think my headphones are?
Continued to work at the company for many years. He did not continue
it's not outputting to my headphones, and I need to hear this. So I also
gave better and better tools. The man,
am interested.
the program, the machine. Both are necessary to implement and make AI a reality. But it was the man who made the machine that made the man a success. Over the last century, the U.S. has led the way in virtually every area of technology because of our pro-innovation bias. We are the innovators. Well, China are the duplicators, and Europe, yes, are the regulators. As we speak, though, my home state of California, with an economy larger than that of Italy, is rivaling the European Union when it comes to trying to lead on regulation. This wouldn't be such an ironic occurrence, except we are the home of innovation and, yes, new bastion of regulation. But just as in the 1990s, when America led the internet revolution,
is it coming out on?
a light touch, such as that offered by the president.
Oh, you know what? It's probably because these headphones
must be the direction we go. Anything else will give us a problem that I will describe.
There we go. Can you still hear me?
If we, in fact, are not innovating 10 times faster than we're regulating,
so the audio is going to be shit. There's like only 2 channels on this.
Is not at least months or, if possible, years ahead of China. There's
not channels, but I have like my regular headset that I can connect to. It's weird. It has like 2 modes. It's like one of them is, you know, really good high quality, and I use that for like my mic, and then I can switch to another setting, which allows me to hear other shit. It's weird. I don't get these headphones. You know, I wish everything was just like, you know, everything was going through one, you know, system. But yeah, these have like 2 settings. It's weird. But we'll keep going on this. I'll just make assumptions for what has been going on.
Some of it actually using AI to duplicate what we're doing will in fact cause us to lose our edge. My home state is part of the problem. The European Union is part of the problem. But as you'll see from our witnesses today, all 50 states have implemented some form of AI regulation. And in fact, there are in the neighborhood of 1,000 pieces of legislation spread over 50 states that will create, if allowed to continue, a patchwork of indecision by the AI industry. Given conflicting regulations, given the inability to roll out with certainty technology, that technology simply will not be a priority. Let there be no doubt, though, either we win in innovation and we win in AI, or we lose our edge on the international stage. Vice President Vance said it best: America's AI technology must remain the gold standard worldwide. We must continue to produce the next generation AI, and we cannot do it with a patchwork of conflicting state laws. As of now, we are ahead. Let there be no doubt. We are ahead in hardware. We are ahead in software development. We are also on the leading edge of having the solutions for the energy problems. That includes modular nuclear reactors. It includes a willingness to provide innovative solutions. During the last break,
need a lot of energy.
I went to one of Apple's facilities, almost 1,700 acres located near Sparks, Nevada. What I saw there were some of the most impressive
energy that doesn't completely fuck up the planet.
Endless rows of
you can't burn coal for this shit, you know? It'd be terrible.
For both AI and conventional data storage. What I also saw was a system that used 0 conventional air conditioning to maintain that cooling. They had managed to beat one of the major causes of unrelated energy consumption, which was air conditioning, through an innovative system of evaporative coolers from locally available water and a filtration system that allowed those to operate 24/7 without in any way being damaged by the high flow of air, they are making advances. This is over and above the innovation that we're seeing in chips and the ones that we plan to, and the additional power. I'm going to contrast just over the border from California, this location in Sparks, Nevada, because it has 64 gigawatts of generation power. Why would they need it? Well, they'd only need it in case of a power failure. Not so. The first time all were operational was to prevent blackout in California, because California lacked the power, and by their going offline, Nevada was able to export power into my home state. That tells you a lot of the innovation in California, but not the ability to have those great new centers located there. In fact, Virginia, just a mile from here, is the #1 location, and other states are competing aggressively for it, and if nothing changes, they will win. These new laws will also affect early stage development, because technical experts, let alone lawmakers, are not capable today of predicting where we will be tomorrow. Earlier this year, in fact, overnight, the thinking on AI development and power needed took a sharp change, and everyone on both sides of the Atlantic and Pacific are learning from what was released, and that will continue. Of course, I don't want to be just a naysayer, because in fact, I am from an innovative state. I am from a state that is second to none in finding the best and the brightest and bringing them here. And although this subcommittee does not have jurisdiction over immigration, I want to make it clear here that AI development will also be about this committee working in a bipartisan basis to find ways to not just attract, but to retain the best and the brightest for that development. Let there be no doubt.
Pull this up on YouTube.
Chinese students studying in America, and most of them are being told to come home and bring with them what they're learning here. The release of the new AI action plan signaled to the world that the Trump administration needs Congress to legislate America First AI. Now, I know that sounds pejorative, but it isn't. The fact is that whether it was catching up on the if you will, the interstate superhighway under Al Gore Sr., or it was leading on taking the ARPANET and turning it into the internet. We have worked together in the past. We have worked to limit states
super
and
loud,
to
sorry.
restrain our own overregulation
Let's
for the benefit of our economy, and it has worked. I want to welcome the President's leadership
House Oversight
and look
Committee.
forward to working to promote it. I want to
California.
say that we have partners on both sides of the aisle. This committee, including, she's not here right now, but Zoe Lofgren and others have been great partners in this in the past.
Sorry.
They will be. Again, I just want to leave us with one truism. America has innovated.
Is that a word? This is some
countries
truism.
around the world for generations. Europe has become a regulator and an admirer of our technology without embracing the way you get it. And China has become the most efficient stealer of technology. And the term duplication, if it was truly innovation, would be a compliment, but it isn't. With that, I recognize the ranking member for his opening statement.
Thank you, Chairman Issa, and thank you to the witnesses for your testimony today. When I drive from Georgia to Washington, D.C.,
love this guy's accent.
6 months or so, and I get a chance to listen to the radio and scan and listen to all my favorite stations and
love this guy.
You know, I've got to pass through 3 states. I go through Virginia, go through South Carolina, go through North Carolina.
I got blocked some bots, apparently.
Georgia. And we all have had experience in crossing state lines before. and you'll have different speed limits and different levels of enforcement. You have um, the experience of figuring out what are the rules. So in other words, because you're going 79 miles an hour at the state line, and then flip to another state, and boom, all of a sudden the speed limit is 65. So you've got to then do, 74 to stop from getting pulled over, and hope that that officers won't stop you. But anyway, when some suggested earlier that we in Congress should preempt all state AI laws,
Am I
they
lagging?
would not
No.
just have done away with states' nascent generative AI consumer protections, they would have preempted common law causes of action against AI companies as well. When the doctrine of caveat emptor, or buyer beware, ruled American jurisprudence,
Okay.
consumers had minimal protection and were expected to thoroughly inspect products themselves. Judicial
Yeah.
interpretation
Remember
caused
aspirin?
change in the early
That was a fuck up.
century as products became less straightforward and more complicated. Common law developed to better protect consumers in products liability and negligence cases. Today, most Americans can hardly imagine
Oh, it's
taking
Tylenol.
apart
Fuck.
a toaster, let alone an AI chat box, to make sure that it works correctly. But caveat emptor is effectively what advocates of a moratorium
Talking about
are
this.
suggesting we revert to when we talk about an AI moratorium. When you preempt an entire field of law, you're preempting the common law right along with it. Supreme Court
More you know.
law has repeatedly found, as it did in Regal versus Medtronic, that a federal law's reference to a state's requirements includes its common law duties. And in plain language, that means if Congress preempts state AI laws, we also preempt state common law, unless the legislation explicitly says something else. Common law cases to protect consumers are already being filed against generative AI platforms. 2 days ago, Senator Hawley held a hearing on the harms to children using AI technology, calling witnesses whose children died or were hospitalized after interacting with artificial intelligence chatbots. I know some of the parents
That's a fucking
and
tragedy.
families are in the room today. Kristen Bride, Juliana Arnold, Mandy Furness, and Megan Garcia. I'm so sorry for what you all have been through, and I admire your commitment to justice. Common law is crucial to the protection of Americans because it exists no matter whether there are comprehensive state laws on the books or no laws governing new technology on the books. Even when there are no statutes, common law helps us set a floor for a standard of care as a society. When some of my colleagues across the aisle talk about a moratorium, preempting common law is exactly what they're talking about. Carve-outs might be offered for some areas of the law. Others may get a loose regulatory structure. But what many don't realize is that the glue that holds the law together would be wiped out in almost every scenario. By protecting common law, we can protect that floor that ensures every person harmed can seek to have their case heard before a court of law. This basic standard of care can spur innovation by preventing a race to the bottom.
Okay, so I was just looking at something. So the whole thing that I want to target is like data brokers and just the kind of having a more transparency to data exchanges in general. And I know a lot of people really wouldn't like this, but I think my personal beliefs is that all data should be visible and transparent. I think of all of the cyber attacks that have happened over, the last 5 years, just the last 5 years. It's crazy to think that your like personally or identifiable data is not already exposed. There are some things you can change, like you can change your phone number or your email and your passwords if that shit gets leaked, which you see a lot with, more consumer breaches. But when you have something that's like PHI, which is personal health, uh, what's PHI? Personal health identification, uh, or what's PHI mean? Protected health information. Sorry, God, I should know that. PHI is protected health information. So whenever these hospital systems get breached, okay, your first of all your personal data, so like where you live, your age, your gender, your date of birth, marital status, uh, that information is leaked, but also all of your medical history. So, if especially if you've gone to this health system for a long time and you haven't moved, I mean, just like all of your medical records, that's all publicly, well, now, privately, publicly available. Whoever, gets a hold of this data after it's leaked, so to me, it's like we've already gotten to a point where all of this, there's been repeated attacks and there's been leaks and, we've done a lot to, remediate, you know, some of that, damage. But I don't know. I just think it's more appropriate to take the stance that, okay, so all of this data is leaked. We're all potentially all exposed. I mean, part of the thing I want to do is to like build a map of like plotting out where these cyber attacks have occurred and like look at the demographics that they serve and like get a real sense of who's been, uh, you know, published. Uh, and really just say, let's let's just let's get ahead of it. Let's make all the data public, not PHI, okay, not public health information. That stays, protected, but like credit card transactions, uh, you know, internet search history, not that's probably invasive. I haven't really thought about this too much, so bear with me while I figure it out. I like to think of it as any kind of information that these data brokers are exchanging. If you're able to personally identify it, uh, everyone that is in that chunk of data that is trading hands should receive some portion of that revenue from that sale, and have that feedback to whoever's data is being transferred. And that would be basically play into like a universal basic income, and it's driven by your data being swapped hands. So as you generate more data, as that data is sold to private companies, you would receive a share of those profits, uh, so that you can at least, my data is out there. People are, making money off my data. I should receive some of it, some of it as well, because it's me, because I like to think of it as like it's your personal attestation to that data. So the company would be paying, in a sense, would be paying you to attest to, yeah, that data is fair and accurate. You're allowed to sell it. Well, you don't say that you're allowed, but you can. They're paying for you to say that you verify it. Like technically, that's how I like to think of it. And it's really just it comes down to what data would fall under this. How would you identify how would you connect the data that's being sold to the individual, which I know that there are like trackers associated with data. I think I read about that a long time ago. I think Google does something with that. Uh, I don't know if that's like cookie information so that you can like keep track of users. But the other part of this bill would be like who's the overarching agency that would be handling the identification of these individual records to real U.S. citizens. Uh, and that, my initial thinking was be like contracted out to like the NSA, you know? I think that's the most reasonable, like logical thing to do. Plus, it builds up those agencies, and I know people are gonna have throw a goddamn fit over that, because it's like I don't know when Snowden got outed, but it was at like 2010, 2013. Uh, but yeah, you know, and I know that'd be like you're invading our privacy, but it's like who would you rather have this data? Would you rather these private companies that sell you shit and manipulate you into uh, behaving a certain way and buying certain things and thinking some products are better than others, or the government who trying to get you to vote some way? I don't know. Maybe this is a little crazy. Maybe this is a little, maybe I'm out of fucking pocket. But I think that makes sense. I think that's legit. You know, I think it's a huge national security win. Uh, I feel like I don't know. I feel like that would make sense. I feel like that could work. And then another portion of that law would be like, all right, how do you get compensation for your data being in a training data set for AI? Which I know everyone wants to get a part of. At least artists, anyone that publishes art digitally, wants to protect their art and get compensation for it. That's going to primarily be our user base to get this, over the hump. But haven't figured that part out yet. The problem is like once the model is trained, it's your data is basically it's like a one-time thing. But the model continues to generate revenue, after that training. It's like digital assets. You record one song, you put in work, you put in 10 hours to make a song, and then you publish the song on Spotify. Well, as long as Spotify is around, that song has the possibility to generate revenue for you. So it's like, well, if your data is collected, should you receive, it makes sense that you should receive, you know, a portion of that revenue stream for as long as that model's around, as long as that model's employed. Uh, it makes it difficult if that model is private or public, if that model is publicly available, because then it's like, well, you can just download the model and use it yourself. We trained it, you can have it, you know. But that's kind of like a fucking punch in the balls because a lot of these models uh, require massive hardware, like huge graphics cards or like multiple graphics cards in parallel. And it's just like the average person is not technically savvy enough or financially in a place to invest in that thing, or they just don't have a fucking need for it. They're like, why do I need to run this, locally? So public models are that presents a pretty big loophole, uh, and something that we would have to work through. Uh, Not to mention the whole organizing data. So the whole like that's my big idea. That's my big bill, and that's one of the big bills. But that's as you can see, it's very ambitious. Covers a lot of shit, and there's a lot of shit that require details to figure out, and it's a very technically confusing area. So I think my goal, I think this is what I want to focus on for this series, is to kind of break it down piece by piece, and understand what we need. First, we need an outline of what we're going to do, what this bill is going to cover, all the nuances to it. Then we have to go into the actual law itself, find existing laws that already govern data brokers in general, uh, to identify where it is in the law that we need to make amendments, and if there's actual spots where we just need to write a bill itself that we need to create new law uh, to govern these things, at a federal level. Uh, God, what else? We also that would also kind of play into looking at the actual United States Code and seeing where this law would fit in. Uh, you know, I guess not fit in, but where we write this actual bill. Like you write the Social Security Act, that's a huge overarching bill that gives power to people, which is probably what we have to do next is we have to write that portion of like we're giving power to what, government authorities and what can they do. Or expanding on those laws, and we gotta build out that timeline. This realistically, would never pass. It's too big, it's too confusing, and it's also very uh, it's polarizing. It's not a lot of people are gonna like it. All right, but it's a good practice. It's a good practice because if we can refine this method and we have a big project that we can chew down on and practice on, we can find more niche laws that we can implement and go after. So all of this, we have to do this whole research and drafting phase, right? And then afterwards, we can do some of the fun stuff, which is okay. Now we got to find our demographic base, people that are going to be our initial supporters to build up, some hype behind it, and get some people to be like, yeah, we really want this. We got to identify those people. We're going to figure out our campaigning strategy for that. Then we got to identify our government officials, like our path to the White House. I guess you could say. So we got to find, I don't know, local councilmen. I think the more appropriate approach for this would be to identify who's talking about this in the first place, namely the people in this video, who are the subcommittees involved, who are those big names, who are what states are they from primarily, uh, and kind of work from the top down that way, and kind of identify who would be our easiest path to go up that way. Once we have a core demographic of users and supporters, we might have to draft up a petition, be like, vote yes on item 49, that type of shit. Uh, but yeah, that's really how this would go. At least how I'm thinking about it. We also have some ancillary tasks that we have to accomplish, like uh, getting some data would be great. Data to prove our point, researching counter arguments and data to disprove that as well. Uh, Identifying some private companies that would be, interested. Who would be, who are the people that we're trying to regulate? We should understand them too. So we should look into data brokers, which I have a great segment that I want to dive into next about that. It's about the people in Vermont. Vermont and California were way ahead of this. Vermont passed a law in like 2017, ended 2017. I'll talk about that in a second. But yeah, so there's a lot of shit that I just listed off that I can't remember that we need to write down, and we can refine this outline as we go. But this will be a nice little side project to have going on in the background, so we can practice our advocacy. Not, I don't know if this is advocacy, but it's how you change shit here. So hopefully more people see this, and we can because you could be 16, like the internet's great. You could be 16 years old, you know, and look all this shit up yourself and just start cold emailing people and be like, hey, I really care about this. I have these ideas for these places in the law. All my friends talk about this. All my family talks about this. It's like something that anyone can do at a pretty reasonably young age. So if we get more people involved and more people talking, uh, that's uh, that's going to be great. Because right now, with social media, it's too easy to have like a really big impact without really caring that much. I think is how I want to say that. Because you can scroll through, Twitter or Instagram and just like something or comment. This is real news. Something that's really like polarizing and triggering. When reality is you really don't give a shit. You're just on break. Like uh, this is like high impact. It's a lot of work, but it's also high impact, high reward, good shit that more people should be doing. I think that there's a gap. People don't want to go into politics, and not to mention it's getting more and more fucking dangerous, which is wrong. Yeah, it's completely wrong. Uh, this is it's not it's not this big of a deal. It really isn't. We there are huge things that that are really important that the law deals with, but uh I don't know. I feel like for the average person, for the like on average, if you're to break down its importance across 360 million people or however many people are in this country, it's divided evenly to a point where it's like you don't really have to care. Only a subset of people really have to care and drive the direction of the country. But the more that people are involved, the more voice, the better, because then we have a nice average of everyone, and we can go to the right place. Because I think the average American is pretty smart. I think the average American has a good head on their shoulders, figure things out. Like good, adjusted people. It's just for some reason everyone's so goddamn polarized. I think it's just because the power's been shifted, to the ends of the spectrum. We need to empower the people in the middle to be like, hey, you got to give a shit and you got to talk. You got to be more. Uh, you got to be more proactive about telling these other people to calm the fuck down. You know. So we're gonna try and yeah, we're gonna try and draft a law. It's gonna be a really big law. It's about the size of Social Security. I think in terms of the impact and like what it covers. It affects every American. So, or anyone that's had a digital footprint, which is, basically everyone, minus the guys in the woods, who we should be watching because they're, you know, off the grid. Who knows what they're doing? They're going after the mail system. We gotta reel those guys in. All right, so this is what I was talking about earlier. So it looks like I've been doing some looking on the side about data brokers. So I feel like the best way to address know thy enemy. That's uh, make sure my camera's not lagging. Art of war. Know your enemy, right? So data brokers aren't our enemy either. It's just like data is really valuable, and I feel like there's a disconnect between people that understand, how valuable data is and how much it drives our lives, and the average person, because I think and I don't blame them. Technology has been innovating at such a rate that the average person hasn't been able to like catch up with that. It's kind of like Moore's law. How everything's like compounding. I think innovation's following that. Uh, so it's like if you're not, paying attention to it all the time, I mean, you're left in the dust, and like new things come out, and you're like, how does this even work? And I don't even understand the premise of this. Uh, it's I think that's a huge problem. I think people just need to be more educated about like what is going on. That's why Tapper's investigation the other day on the merger, it's not the same thing, but it's kind of the same thing where it pulls the curtain behind and shows you what's really going on behind the scenes. And it's like you got to understand that with data. It's like the lifeblood of every decision maker in this country, or at least it should be. Okay, so what I saw originally was that Vermont and California, uh, and others, data brokers must register annually with a state agency, uh, and they have to disclose details about their data collection, their sharing, and their selling prices. So this is going to be a good place for us to start ahead of their time. 2017 and already putting in legislation for this is absolutely incredible, unbelievable. So much foresight. These are people we should pay attention to. Uh, was in effect January 1st, 2019. Okay. Bill could be enacted, found here. We're going to want to pay attention to that. Attorney General's guidance for compliance with this law can be found here. Governor sign Section 2 of this bill mandates on or before December 17th, Commissioner of Financial consulting with an appropriate definition of the term data broker. The data broker industry should be regulated by the Commissioner of Financial Regulation and the Attorney General. Additional consumer protections that data broker legislation should seek to include that are not addressed within the framework of an existing federal or state consumer protection laws. Maybe we start at a state level. State level, see how others adopt it, and then kick it up to the federal level. I think that could be cute. you know, it could be cute. Actually, it could be cool. Uh, Society ratings with actual and potential harms the industry may pose to consumers. Okay, how should we take notes? How should we take notes? I feel like a OneNote would be really good. I don't know if I have a license for it, but I was also thinking about that purple rock one where it's like a giant map, but I think that might be a little confusing and it can get disorganized. Let's just do OneNote. Make sure I don't have a doxing OneNote. This is all shit I can delete. It was all shit from school, and I used it for I used it for 1 week. I see 1 day's worth of shit in here. Okay, let's go ahead and delete all this. It's not syncing. God, don't tell me I don't have access. That would I just delete this. Yeah, this is working. Cool. I should be listening to this conference, but it's not exactly what I was thinking it was going to be. What are they talking about now?
Numbers to Amazon. State digital laws have tamed the worst excesses of the internet and helped to make it a trustworthy place for innovation, connection, free expression, and business. And broad AI preemption would have the opposite effect for artificial intelligence. Third, I would like to address the claim frequently made by industry that state regulations somehow stifle innovation. As history makes clear, these arguments are, in my opinion, mistaken and misguided. Law creates and enables innovation by
It really does.
stabilizing the marketplace. It sets the ground rules for fair and robust competition, making the market safe and sustainable for consumers.
Plus, I think you get a huge advantage. At least this is what I've felt over the last couple of weeks reading legislation, is they detail out a lot about industries you want to break into. So you can get a really good head start and like understanding of a sector you want to break into if there's a lot of legislation behind it because they detail out all of the rules for that landscape that you're trying to break into. So I think it gives you a huge competitive advantage and it allows you to think of, oh, okay, these two things are covered. It gives you a good place to like start and dive into research, as well as that's how you find loopholes in laws. Not like loopholes to like break laws, but loopholes to like get an advantage and see where you can get creative. You can get inspired by it. I think reading legislation is super important.
In this way,
Saying finding loopholes is probably a really negative thing to say, but I didn't mean it that way. You can get inspired and you can learn a lot about a specific industry you want to get into.
power to regulate AI, potentially anything done with a computer would be a reckless and grievous error. State regulations have always played an essential role in building consumer trust and shaping the digital revolution for the better. Thank you, and I welcome your questions.
Thank you. I understand the ranking member would like to make an opening statement.
If that's all right with you, Mr. Chairman.
It is always good to hear from you.
Well, thank you kindly.
The gentleman's recognized.
I'm very grateful to you for putting together this very important hearing, and thanks to the witnesses for your statements. When commercially available AI debuted 3 years ago, the consequences were breathtaking from the start. Generative AI spurred scientific research and provided astonishing new tools to creators. The massive jumpstart to American
I'm gonna have this playing in the background. I need to be quiet when I read so I can read quickly. But I am gonna read and start taking notes. Where did I just put that page? I just had Vermont open. Did I close it? God damn it. Oh, no, it's right there. Okay, I had it pulled over. Okay. Yeah, deepfakes are also a huge problem. I mean, that's a huge problem, but I think I don't know. There's a lot of uh, shit that needs to be addressed with AI, but it's too important not to stop. It's kind of a fucked up place. It's again, it's we're innovating so fast that we're not able to keep up with it on a national level. You know, more it's like fucking a fraction of a percentage point of people really understand like how it works and are like experts in the field. And I think the gap between everyone else is too big right now. And people need to understand what how powerful this is because I still don't even really know the implications. I know that it elevates people in terms of what they're able to do. I mean, you should see the Excel workbooks I can create. You know, it raises people's skill to a point where they can operate at a higher level. It's an increase in productivity, but it's also an increase. There was shut this off again. There was an interesting article put out by Meta about analyzing the risks of like elevating actors, like bad actors, using AI. So it's like you take a criminal who's dumb but it wants to do harm. If you give them an AI chatbot, they're able to ask the right questions and get the information they need to carry out uh, having a larger impact in terms of the damage they would do because they're getting assistance from these AI chatbots that are at a PhD level, in multiple domains. Let me pull that up because that was an interesting paper. Let me put that in here. I should put that in the chat actually. Hang on. Uh, paper on AI elevation of bad actors. Figure out what this was called, and then I'll pull it up on this other computer. That paper does not appear to be a specific. Yes, it was. It was a specific. Uh, oh shit. What was it called? Uh, God, it had a specific name. AI paper classifying AI bad actors. There is a fucking sorry, excuse my language, but it's gonna responsibly produce these. God, who did I send that to? No, it's not this. And it wasn't a paper. It was a article. Let me careful. Uh, God, I would not, I can't believe that it's this hard to find. Uh, yeah, bad actors, evaded capabilities, risk. Artificial. Because it's not the misuse of AI. They're using AI as intended. They're getting information that they need, that they want, but uh, I can't believe I can't find this paper. I'll find it. Hang on. Let me see. Yeah, I got to download it here. I'll keep this going in the background. Sorry, it's not surprising that it's this hard to find. I mean, there's so much talk about AI in general, but I really want to
between AI innovation
I
or
really want to find this
global
paper
powers and federalism, between
if
business
it's
and
still around.
government or national security and safe innovation. In 1816, Jefferson wrote, "Laws and institutions must go hand in hand with the progress of the human mind. As that becomes more developed, more enlightened, as new discoveries are made, new truths discovered, and manners and opinions change, with the change of circumstances, institutions must advance also to keep pace with the times." What we're seeing across America is individual states looking at these amazing technological developments and asking whether and how their laws need to change to protect their citizens and advance the common good. Today, you might think that the issue has some kind of necessary partisan valence to it, Republicans on one side, Democrats on the other, but opposition to an AI moratorium, I think, is broad and bipartisan. In fact, when some of my Republican colleagues tried to pass a moratorium through our last spending bill, attorneys general from across the states, red, white, and blue, sent a
Our
letter to
approach to
Congress
frontier
saying,
AI.
don't do this to our state laws. In another letter, 17 Republican governors wrote to Majority Leader Thune and Speaker Johnson praising their
There we go.
latest Big Beautiful
There we
Bill
go. Okay.
and explaining
Yeah. First of all, the little caption on this focused on the most critical risks in the areas of cybersecurity threats and risks, from chemical to biological weapons. Yeah, this is a crazy paper. Uh, identify reference risks, run threat modeling classes, conduct AI, assess risks. I thought this was longer. The Frontier AI Framework. Approach to AI governance. This might be the actual paper that I was reading. They had a cool little table. Large, devastating, possibly net new. Yeah, this is basically talking about like as they're making an AI model, if it's capable of doing such big damage in the hands of, a wrong, bad actor, then they would, what's their classification for stopping work? Yeah, this was a really cool paper, in a very morbid way. It's like, okay, what if someone was plotting the end of the world? They talk about these risks. They're thinking about these risks. Yeah, PhD level proficiency in the relevant subspecialty for the threat in question, use of biodesign tools. AI being used for what it's used for. You want an expert in your pocket that you can talk to about any domain in the hands of someone that's you got bad intentions. It's a bad thing. Let me share this in the chat so I can pull this up later. Hang on.
the moratorium provision stripping the right
But
of
this was new.
individuals to
I
regulate
think this was in
technology in
March,
any way without
March of this year.
public debate was, quote, the antithesis of what our founders envisioned. I surely disagree with these governors on many things, but I think that they are right and should indeed be free to create what they call, quote, smart regulations of the AI industry that simultaneously protect consumers while also encouraging this ever-developing and critical sector. In a statement submitted for this hearing, AI startup Bria wrote that a moratorium on state laws would create a giant vacuum and strip away the rules needed to, quote, raise capital, form partnerships, and build safely in order to win consumer trust. Without a road on which to travel forward, startups are cut out of the market in favor of large companies with the legal and fundraising teams necessary to deal with a barren legal landscape. Finally, some argue we need unrestrained AI development to properly compete with China. The subcommittee has held many bipartisan hearings on the threats that remain
I just
dangerous
realized I'm getting really off topic.
from China. It would be amazing, I think, even dangerous to
I
posit
forgot why we
a
even brought this
society
up.
more like China.
Just talking about how dangerous this shit
In
is.
fact, it seems more plausible to me
How
that
dangerous, but how
a stronger, better
it
partnership
really
with
is
America, while
gonna push us. I
protecting
mean, we need
their
these
trust
AI tools. It just
and safety processes,
elevates bad
will
actors, but it elevates everyone to a level of
ensure that AI is both
real
more advanced,
productivity and
more
you know
durable,
access to knowledge. I think that's the biggest thing. It's like, big problems become more accessible. The average guy can like look at me. I'm trying to change a law. And this is all capable because of AI, all possible because of AI. Where did I pull up that data brokers? Let's just go ahead and pull you in here. Okay, so the full text of the bill is enacted can be found here. Okay, let's open that on a new tab. Vermont General Assembly. Allowed to become law without signature on May 28th or 22nd. Detailed status as enacted. Okay, so this is Vermont's uh, Vermont's act relating to data brokers and consumer protection. So we can say, as enacted, put this link here. Of course, the hard part is we actually have to read it. I don't trust AI. That's the other thing. You can't trust AI to, really capture everything. I'm hesitant on that. Findings and intent, and the right to opt out. Okay, this is important. This line right here, because it's like when you make a direct transaction with someone online, like a e-commerce site, you understand that you may not understand, like comprehend like at the front of your brain, but in the back of your mind, you kind of understand that what I'm doing here. They're obviously going to have a log of that, to some extent, because if you dispute a transaction, they have to be able to pull it up. You understand that part of you're putting that information out there, uh, that it will be collected. Whereas with data brokers, they're buying this data, I assume, from these companies, from these businesses, and then selling it to other businesses or marketing campaign or marketing agencies, or political agencies, I guess. But uh, where should I put this? Put this here. Data brokers exist. Who the companies are, what information they collect, and may not be aware of available recourse. Legal authority and duty to exercise its traditional police powers to ensure that, which includes both the right to regulate businesses to operate in the state and engage in activities that affect Vermont consumers, as well as the right to require disclosure of information to protect consumers from harm, to provide consumers with necessary information about brokers, narrowly tailored definition of data broker, and require data brokers to register annually with the Secretary of State, provide information about their data collection activities, opt-out policies, purchaser credentiality, credentialing practices and security breaches. Ensuring that data brokers have adequate security standards. News headlines in the past several years demonstrate the large sophisticated businesses, governments, and other public and private institutions are constantly subject to cyber attacks. That's cool. We should think of that. Maybe I'm pulling up too much. I have a feeling I'm not going to come back to this. Billions of consumers. To require government agencies, certain regulated businesses to adopt an information security program. This is important. We should capture this. The reason this is important is because this has to deal with data privacy, which is kind of the same silo we want to put our legislation in. Is like anything that has to deal with data, we should be kind of experts on, so we know where we would fit in. If it's in the Federal Privacy Act, as it's listed here, or in the HIPAA Act, wherever it may be. This is the kind of the big problem that this big hurdle that this law faces, is that all the laws that are currently in place are to provide privacy, and I'm basically saying, hey, let's pull back the curtain. Let's, I guess let's not pull back the curtain on a public scale where the public can see this data, but maybe on a federal level where they have to report every transaction to the government. That way, it still retains privacy, but it allows for the actual functioning of this bill to take place, which is, you know, to give back, allow people to associate people to this data, and then to have these people retain or reap some of the profits from this transaction for every transaction. So yes, the speed at which these transactions take place will slow down. It'll be a much lengthier process to acquire data, but it shouldn't be that long. It shouldn't be that long to identify everyone. I feel like we have good data scientists. A lot of this data that's being sold is, I'd imagine it's in good form, so there wouldn't be a lot of data cleaning that has to take place. Uh, and if you can identify one row, I imagine you can identify a lot of the rows in a data set, especially if there's guarantees on how complete the data is, which is probably something we should look into. Mm. But imagine if you're getting anything from a business, a lot of the core functioning stuff is going to be complete. Outline. Uh, we should work on this. We should work on this while this is playing in the background. Oh yeah, that's another thing. Oh my God, fucking scam calls. That's gonna be a real pain in the ass. Soon enough, you gotta come up and shake my hand if you need me to agree to something. That's just the way this shit's gonna have to work. All right.
I thank the gentleman. All other opening statements, without objection, all other opening statements be placed in the record. It is now my pleasure pleasure to go to the gentleman who's declined for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank the ranking member for referencing our third president, gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Jefferson, and one of our great inventors from our earliest days of our republic, and for the chairman referencing the work of our current governor, Governor Youngkin, who is working to make sure that Virginia is the leader in data center development. We continue to be the leader nationally, and we intend to stay that way as AI grows and develops. Mr. Frazier, you've written that the Constitution's intellectual property clause is first and foremost a directive to advance and spread knowledge. That was on X a couple weeks ago. How should Congress strike the right balance between protecting copyright owners and ensuring that AI regulation continues to promote the spread of knowledge consistent with that constitutional purpose?
Thank you very much for the question, Congressman, and thanks for the follow, or at least perhaps the like. I think in this regard, the Constitution is clear that the IP clause has always been grounded in progressing the promotion of science and useful arts. And here, if you go back to the founding articles, as well as subsequent interpretation by the Supreme Court, the focus has always been on making sure that there's the spread of knowledge across the country. IP laws grant an exclusive right to creators to attempt to incentivize that creation. What we need is to make sure that there is an economic analysis of the extent to which those laws are working as intended. The purpose of the IP clause is not the profit of creators, it is the progress of society. And so what we need to get back to are those first principles when it comes to examining copyright law and patent law. Right now, if you look at analysis from scholars such as Richard Watt, you will see that the preponderance of copyright benefits are not going to your average Joe and Jane author, but to large publishers. And so we need more analysis on that front.
Would you agree that ensuring transparency in AI systems, such as being able to trace what data was used to train a model, is essential both for protecting IP rights and for maintaining public trust in AI platforms?
I would agree that broad overviews of the sources of training data are important to get an understanding of where and how models are being trained.
And in that same spirit, could giving creators a private right of action for tampering with content credentials help strike the right balance between protection and innovation?
My own estimation is that granting that sort of right would be a significant barrier to AI innovation, given the centrality of access to data for innovation. We've seen that many courts and many scholars have regarded the use of data as a transformative purpose under copyright law, and denying the ability to train on wide swaths of data would be a real hindrance to our ability.
I think this is the big one.
As many folks have said on many occasions, bad data leads to bad AI. If you want better AI, you want better quality information. And if we throw many legal gears into that equation, we won't get
There's another thing. We're running out of data to train on. This would be another driving factor for people to continue generating authentic data. The more data you have out there, the more likely it is to be collected and exchanged, and that's more revenue in your pocket. That's another good thing I think is a good selling point.
Fellow Virginians, glad to be here. So I was around actually working
Exchange.
in the 90s on the early days of the World Wide Web, and my observations would be we did fit for purpose for the 90s. Now, in the 2 decades since, we have seen the rise of applications on top of that technology where we may need to make adjustments. And I think what we need to separate is the desire to roll out the technology so that the entire nation could have access to the internet. And at the same time, if we see that the applications need adjustments for the law, that would make more sense to adjust. However, I would say what we need to recognize as well as we go forward here, where are we trying to advance the technology so it can be used by startups, it can be used by communities, it can be used by legacy organizations that haven't gone AI native yet. And at the same time, if we see there are applications where we want to prevent harm to individuals, to children, and things like that, adjust the applications while not limiting innovation on the technology.
Just like other businesses, bad actors have to be accountable for the harms they cause. In addition, if we consider some type of temporary pause for state-level AI-specific regulation, we have to ensure that other generally applicable state and federal laws continue to apply, with copyright law being one example. Do you think AI platforms should be held to the same standard of accountability as any other business, including when it comes to respecting copyright?
Absolutely, and I would actually say that's why I'm so excited about federated learning, because there actually could be the opportunity where, whether you're a recording artist, you're a musician, you're an individual, you you could actually say, here's the data that I have pooled. You can learn on my data in situ as opposed to shipping it somewhere, and we can have that actually recorded as a transaction. And then in return, I'm getting benefit, whether it be financial or otherwise. It's a new model that's actually quite possible. It's been possible for more than 5 or 6 years, and we can motivate people to do it.
Great. Thank you. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Who seeks recognition? The gentleman from Georgia is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Professor Richards, I mentioned in my opening statement my concern that broad federal preemption of state AI laws would also preempt common law causes of action. How does common law, particularly tort law, help protect Americans from harm?
Well, thank you for the question, Representative Johnson. Common law is the foundation of American law. It is older than the United States. It goes back to the colonies, to the English tradition. Common law has a flexibility to the law. If we think about my own specialty, privacy law, there was a reference earlier by one of the other witnesses to Justice Brandeis's right to be let alone. Privacy law in America, it was originally a product of common law, where the law adjusted to realize that data about people, information was being collected without their willingness, it was being disclosed. And an important line of cases relevant to this subject today, to protect the names or likenesses of people who pictures and names were being used to sell products without their consent. So common law is a tremendous source of flexibility and vitality in our law that allows the law to adjust to changed circumstances like the advent of technological revolutions such as artificial intelligence.
Thank you. Can common law be used to protect Americans even in the absence of explicit statute?
Absolutely, sir. I mean, that is sort of the nature of the common law, that judges can apply the existing rooted principles of tort law and contract law and property law, and they can, from those general principles, divine specific applications. They can provide new protections so that the law continues, as it always has, to evolve alongside technological invention, as the ranking member referred to Mr. Jefferson's statement from 1816, which, as a proud graduate of UVA, I also endorse.
Some of the current lawsuits against AI companies are being brought under common law to hold companies accountable for the harm that their products have caused to children. For example, Megan Garcia is suing Character Technologies and Google after her 14-year-old son, Sewell Setzer, died by suicide. She testified before our colleagues in the Senate this week that his death was, quote, the result of prolonged abuse by AI chatbots, was the result of prolonged abuse by AI chatbots on a platform called Character AI, end quote. The chatbot sent Sewell sexual messages and asked him to come home to me as soon as possible. Others have filed lawsuits against Character Technologies and OpenAI for wrongful death, negligence, and other causes under both common law and state laws about deceptive or unfair trade practices. These tragic cases show some of the worst possible harms that can arise from AI technologies. Professor Richards, does an AI moratorium run the risk of impeding these lawsuits that seek to hold companies accountable?
It would, I particularly if it were defined broadly. And let me also say, in response to your question, Representative Johnson, as a parent myself, my heart goes out to the families who've lost their children. I think when we think about laws like negligence or rules like negligence, negligence was the great innovation of the common law to respond to industrialization. It means that anybody acting against other people must behave in a reasonable way and not cause unreasonable harm. I am sure that
Be an attempt to associate every data point in an exchange to an individual or entity.
The 19th and 20th centuries would have argued that the common law developing the law
Every
of
record
negligence would have impeded innovation, but actually it safeguarded the development of those technologies by enabling us to be able to drive
exchange to an individual or entity so that a fraction of the monetary exchange can be
of our inventions, knowing that we are safe
record in a transaction.
those technologies or their deployers overstep the line, we have a right of action to
No, it's exchange and then of the monetary transaction. It's an exchange, a fraction of the monetary, the payment. And diverted to the pool of individuals and entities that make up the
employment discrimination, consumer protection, the traditional provinces of state regulation. And let me also, if I could add one additional thing, Representative. Briefly.
comprise. Was that a word?
States filled the gap that is which did not the internet did not generally have done so. And I think with AI.
There we go. I need that to be quiet. I need to be quiet because I need to think out loud. I need to read it out loud so I can hear how it sounds. So there must be an attempt to associate every record in exchange to an individual or entity so that a fraction of the payment for the exchange can be diverted to the pool of individuals and entities that make up that information. Payment for the exchange can be diverted to the pool of individual can be allocated to the payment to the pool of individuals and entities that make up that information in the form as an attestation fee. Must be an attempt to associate every record in exchange to an individual or entity so that a fraction of the payment for the exchange can be allocated as payment to the pool of individuals and entities that make up that information in allocated as payment to the pool of individuals and entities that make up that information. Provided that information. To that make up, I need to find a word for that. The payment to individuals and entities that make up a set of information considered the attestation defined as the rate for the individual or entities attestation to the validity and completeness, probably just the validity of the information provided. Must be an attempt to associate every record in exchange to an individual or entity so that a fraction of the payment for the exchange can be allocated as payment to the pool of individuals and entities that provided that information. The payment to individuals and entities that make up a set of information is defined as the rate for the individuals or entities attestation to the validity of the information provided to their share, their portion of the information provided. So I can see like another point of this is like if there's a data transaction between data broker A and a company B, if company B wants to challenge a portion of the data that came from uh, data broker A, uh, the record that's in question would have to be traced back to the individual entity, and we basically would have to ask that individual entity, hey, did you make this transaction at this certain date that provided this information? And that's what the attestation is technically for. Uh, so it would be a good way to combat like fraud and like bad data, you know, because it's like, oh, you gotta ask this person, oh, is this data legit? Well, we paid for that attestation, so they have to comply with it. So basically, what this law would say is that the citizen is then, you know, if you've received payment for this data, you have to attest to it if there's a claim of fraud against it. So it's basically like jury duty. Like you have to go to jury duty. You have to respond to a summons, and this would basically be that. It's another summons. Must be an attempt to associate every record in an exchange to an individual or entity so that a fraction of the payment for the exchange can be allocated as payment to the pool of individuals and entities that provided that information. The payment to individuals and entities that make up a set of information make up the payment to individuals and entities that make up the set of information being exchanged is defined as the rate for the individuals or entities attestation to the validity of their portion of the information provided. And it's not their actual attestation, it's their presumed, assumed. Is that the word? Assumed? Expected. Adopted as a basis of reasoning, expected, of a manner or identity taken on or adopted. That makes sense. That's accurate. The payment to individuals and entities that make up the set of information being exchanged is defined as the rate for the individuals or entities assumed attestation to the validity of their portion of the information provided. So we're assuming that they attest that this information is legit. It came from me. I made this transaction. It is valid data. And if you dispute this, then I am legally obligated to attest to this data because I received payment for it. If I opted out of payment, I don't have to be summoned to anything. I don't have to fucking deal with it. But if I do receive payment for it, I have to be willing to attest to any data that is pulled into question. So anyone who acquires or trades data. Uh, this is a privacy thing. So companies, people that sell their customers' data, because what I'm walking towards is like every company has to report their data to the government, which is wrong. That shouldn't be the case. Anytime they sell the data, that data set has to be reported, uh, and has to be associated with an identifier of some kind. So you would have to report it. Basically, you have to send that data to the person that you're exchanging it to, and you also have to send it to some governing agency. It's like, oh, we got a new transaction coming in. This is all the people in the record, or this is all the data uh, in the data set. We have to go through and now correlate every record with someone or something. Uh, so it could be we can basically build a middleman for exchanges. We can just get rid of. There could still be data brokers, but they have to be working. Like I imagine, like a government agency is in the middle of every transaction. And it's like you want to sell this data to who? Uh, basically like a bidding service. So like we have like a marketplace, right? That the federal government implements in every state. You're a company. You put it on that marketplace that you're selling this data. Data brokers come to the other side and they see that there's data for sale. I'm going to acquire that data. The company sells that data to the government. The government then processes it to associate it with these people in the record as to some level of completeness. Uh, and then once that's completed, they forward that to the requesting body or the person that purchased it. Uh, so that could work because that allows for us to do that mapping of these individuals to these things, which could be very straightforward if the information being sold is credit card information for transactions. That's easily identifiable. You can just pass that on through. You just got to check the completeness for every record. We could have a requirement. So we could have a requirement that like 80% of the data has to be complete enough to where it can be associated with someone. Because if it can't be tied to someone, what is the fucking data even? What is it even? You know, it's anonymous. It's anonymous data, which is good. That's good. It protects people's privacy. If it can't be tied to anyone, you know, what's the harm in trading it? What kind of insights is that? It's uh, it's anonymous, but but there's still insights to it because you can de-identify a data set and it's still coming from a population of people that provided it. So maybe it should be personally identifiable information. Be like, this data contains personally identifiable information. Okay, well, you have to sell it to the government first, and we'll sell it on your behalf to data brokers. So that would like motivate people to, if you are exchanging data, to be de-identified, which all the data that we train on is probably de-identified. So, it's that's kind of like a moot point for this bill. It's like it can't be tied to anyone, but it's still, is providing actionable insights. Fuck. You know, how much, I need to understand like how much information is identifiable and how much of a process would it be to identify someone from an anonymized data set? So I imagine you'd have to pull in multiple public de-identified data sets and correlate them all together to to re-identify them. You know, hmm. You know, because my vision is that any data that you provide, that you put on the internet, you should have ownership of, and you should receive benefits from. You know, even if it's anonymized or de-identified, you know, that's still that was your action. That was something you did that is now being used to drive insights, right? You know, they have a lot of water. Anyone see this? Just like fucking rows of water bottles. Deer Park, good to know. They're keeping them up and running. Okay, fuck. Because then you just sell everything anonymized, and then it's just credit information. But what kind of data is traded? You know, what is collect? I imagine the most things that are collected that are valuable are transactional data or is transactional data from websites. And that credit card information is the identifying portion. What do they trade? What do data brokers trade? What are some data sets that are available? I think it's a good question. Uh, the identified data. Uh, we got to answer these questions first. I think the general purpose is good. Must be an attempt to associate every record in an exchange to an individual or entity so that a fraction of the payment for the exchange can be allocated as payment to the pool of individuals and entities that provided that information. The payment to individuals and entities that make up the set of information being exchanged is defined as the rate for the individuals or entities assumed attestation to the validity of their portion of the information provided. I think that's not bulletproof, but I think that's pretty solid as the core idea of what this law really is. It's paying people uh, for their uh, uh, attestation to the validity of the data being exchanged. They're like, yep, that's good. That is good. That is quality data you're receiving. I did that. That is real. That's real. It's not made up. But what so I imagine like gender, name, health history, wide range of information, including demographic data like name, age, address, financial data, credit scores, income, purchase history, online behavior. Online behavior is tough. Damn. From websites visited, search history, social media. Social media would be easier because let's see, to register for social media, usually you have to put down a phone number and an email address or an email address. Email address is harder because anyone can have an email address, but a phone number usually has to be registered in someone's name, unless you just buy a fake phone. So it's kind of harder there. Uh, software development kits for tracking your online activity. Data brokers can collect information from apps by providing software development kits to developers or by tracking your online activity through cookies. So that is also tough. That also can be, I think, could be tied back to someone, to an individual. So it can tie down to a specific person, but that person is still anonymized, I imagine, because it's just like you can follow them down to a cookie number or a cookie string, but it's like who is that string? You know, uh, that would be on the software. Whoever implemented that software is keeping track of those. I imagine they would have to keep track of those cookies and associate them with a user account. And then it's also like, well, who is that user account? How are you creating accounts? And we shouldn't be forcing people to put their like legal names or like their personal records into these accounts they sign up for. Or should we? Be like, to participate online, you have to be a real person online. That would help a lot, I think, in a lot of cases. It's scary because the internet is fucking scary, but I think it would help a lot with a lot of things. I think people would behave more if it was federally required for every service you signed up on, being like, yeah, this is my government ID. This is who I am. Especially for social media. They already assume that, from credit card transactions. So, and that's something that Vermont's assuming is like you have a relationship with the services you use that that you understand that they're collecting that shit. So maybe that should be a step forward. There's already uh, things in motion to do like age verification on social media. You have to have an ID. You do that for dating apps. You don't do an ID, but you do a face scan. You know, so that information be like, let's collect biometric data on every citizen. That's fucked. ICE is doing that, by the way. Uh, that's something you should know is that ICE is collecting that data for deportees or yeah, immigrants and like children. You know, completely fucked. Completely fucked. They're taking like blood records, like blood samples. I remember reading that. I saw it on Wired. It's fucking crazy. Uh, okay, so it looks like most of the shit that data brokers collect is can be personally identifiable. First of all, public records, motor vehicle records, voter registrations. Voter registrations, if they're public, do a lot of damage because that's associating you with a political party and an address and a phone number. It's fucked. You register to vote, you voluntarily give up all that information. It's crazy. There used to be a website where you could find that shit, and you could request it from the government, and most people are pretty willing to give it out. It's crazy. Court records usually legal, property sales legal. Like you have to have your identity associated with it. Birth certificate's crazy. Why do you want to know my birth certificate? Why does that matter? How does that play into your algorithm? Let's see. Retailers, credit card providers, loyalty programs. So really, we would have to be able to associate email addresses to a person, phone numbers to a person, which is pretty straightforward. Uh, what other ways? Credit cards easily go back to a social security number. Uh, those are like the core points that I imagine that this governing entity would need. They would need to have processes to take, okay, this is an email address, we work backwards and find the person. People can have multiple email addresses, people can have multiple phone numbers. So they have to have an affiliation kind of map, be like, okay, these, public domain or these public addresses, communication, portals are associated with this person. Online profile, that's basically like to work backwards from online profiles. You sign up for a service, you enter your email, Google account, uh, you know, so that would be, it seems like all the shit that data brokers sell is tied back to a person. It would be easy to tie it to an actual person, not just an individual. That's the one thing I'm worried about is like you can get like really specific de-anonymized or de-identified data, but you can single it out to one record, but that record doesn't tie you to a specific person. You know, but if we put in, we have to write out a method to take that de-identified data. You can get an individual record in that de-identified data. If it has a phone number or an email address or some other link, we can work backwards from that, and that's what the government keeps, is that mapping of phone numbers and email addresses to individuals for this purpose. And that is private. And that is very well protected, is what we say. It's like that takes the highest protection. And a lot of that information is publicly available. Like you can look up someone's phone number, you know. You can at least try to. I know there's a website that does that, uh, where you can type in a phone number and it pulls up all the people that have been associated with that phone number. So it's not even like that much of a guarded secret, you know. It's easy to get if you know. I mean, my aunt uses it to identify scam calls. Things are out there, you know. It would be great to see one of these data sets, to speak to someone who exchanges this data, but they don't want to have these regulations that eats into their profit margins. But imagine these guys have huge margins because all you're really, I mean, you have to store this data, but other than that, you're just, buying and selling fucking zip files. That's really what it is. I imagine. So, so what about de-identified data? Imagine that most data that is exchanged or acquired by data brokers contain personally identifiable information that can be easily associated with an individual, with a person of the US. Associated with a person of the US. I imagine one step back from PII would be uh, what do you like identifiers for like what's your phone number? What's a definition for a phone number and an email address? It's a method of communication that is like it's a method of communication, but it's your identifier. It's your, it's what's associated with you. Uh, like it's your address, I guess. As phone numbers, email addresses, Uh, physical addresses for like actual mail, you know. I feel like most most of the data that's being generated usually has a phone number, email address, or physical address associated with it. Maybe it's like a domain, like an internet domain. You know, what kind of activity? Because, you know, you take an internet domain like Amazon, any of the data that's being, it's not Amazon that's exchanging, you know, or providing, generating that data. It's the individuals on Amazon that's generating that data. So I don't think domains are really a big portion of what goes on. Because if it's an internet domain, it's the users of that internet domain that we're interested in. You know, the internet domain itself is the one that's exchanging that data for like real profit. You know, it's the individuals that we're interested in. So phone numbers, email addresses, physical addresses. Unless which phone numbers, email addresses, and physical addresses might be PII, personally identifiable information. I distinguish or trace an individual's identity either alone or in combination of other information. Sensitive and non-sensitive details such as name, social security number, address, biometric data, financial and medical history, and even less direct identifiers like IP addresses. IP addresses, that I'm retarded. That makes a lot more sense because that is uh, that's individuals, and that's a huge privacy concern. It's like, who is that? That's you online, you know, and that would help tie in the activity on applications. That could help with the cookies deal, because I'm pretty sure cookies keep track of the IP address and the device. So devices and IP addresses. That's sensitive domain. Phone numbers, email addresses, IP addresses, Mac. What is it? A Mac address? Mac. You got a network interface controller. I thought every device had a MAC address. I didn't. Well, I guess any device that connects to the internet, because it's on the network interface controller. Yeah. Yeah. So if that's scary, the government knows you have an iPhone. They know which iPhone is yours. Is basically what this would say. And it's like, how? Why is that so crazy? You know, the government knows what car you drive. You know, government knows what house you live in. Government knows your address. What's so crazy about having your phone? Well, they can hear they can monitor my communications. Well, that's true. Have more in-person conversations. But, you know, you have an Alexa in the room, you know. They're listening all the time. It's not just when they say, "Hey Alexa." You know what I'm saying? I feel like we can get people to understand that. And this isn't to this is purely on the internet. This is not to spy on your phone. That is different. This is when it's exchanged in the cloud. They don't have a right to be in your phone while you make those transactions. It's only when the action is done and it's being transacted that we have that that we can use that information. That should be a clear distinction. And maybe we should make this all voluntary. It's like, how do you build this network of identifiable data? Well, we're going to have a public portal on the just make a website, a .gov website that's like register your device. Any data that's collected, anytime this device appears in a data that's exchanged, we will cash app you $1, 50 cents. Be like, okay, I opt into having not device information collected from this device, but I allow you to identify this device as me. Like, this is my device. Then it's kind of weird. Then it's like, oh, you look, this guy watches a lot of Pornhub. It's like, I don't want them to. I don't want government agents to, if they wanted to, they can look it up. That's tough. That is super tough. You know, uh, but that already happens. That already. I mean, that data is already being sold. So something about giving it to the government sucks. But if Amazon buys it, who gives a shit? You know, that's tough. That's that's a big pill to swallow. It'd be like anything that happens on your phone. Ooh, I I can see why people would hesitate for that. You're like, I send nudes. It's like they're gonna have that on Snapchat. You know, it's I mean, the data is out there, right? The data is being collected, so it shouldn't be that bad. It's you're bringing it to people's attention. It's like you're voluntarily, you know, like raising your hand and being like, yeah, this is my phone, this is my computer, you know, no, that's my credit card. I mean, we do that with credit cards. People buy shit with credit cards all the time. Same with your bank account, you know, and Bitcoin for that matter. You know, decentralized. Sure. Let's see. Oh, I gotta buy groceries and do laundry here in a minute. Oh, see, we've been going for about 2 hours. Uh, yeah, let's see. Yeah, this is interesting. This is what kind of data is traded? Well, we had a good. Dislikes. Yeah, I don't like that they have my location data. That's fucking weird. It's like I know where you were. It's like stalking. It really is like stalking. I mean, it is stalking at this point. It's corporate stalking. You know, we should get paid for it. Be like, if you're gonna follow me, you're gonna put some money in my wallet, put some money in my pocket. You know, we have your we know your daily routes. We have your transactions. We know where you go and what you're doing. It's like, oh, every day he leaves his house at 10:30. He makes a stop at Dunkin' Donuts and he gets coffee. Oh, so I know you get coffees in the morning on Saturday at 10 o'clock. I know that behavior about you. I know what route you take. I know what car you drive. I know who you voted for. I know what you see on that highway. I know what advertisement is out there. So I know where you're from. I know, you know what's going on in your area. I can read the news from where you are. I can see, you know, it's a crazy, reality how perverse this information is, when it's aggregated and you look at a whole collage of different data points. You should get paid for that. You really should. At least something. I mean, I don't know. It's better than being like, I know they say ignorance is bliss, but once you paint a really scary picture for people, it's like, be like, I know it's scary, but we're gonna pay you. You know, it's gotten to this point. You deserve some reconciliation, for it. I don't know how. Well, I think back, before the internet, you still registered your car with the state. Yeah, you registered your phone number, your address. But things were a lot more local, I feel. Uh, People did drive, I remember reading something that people have become more sedentary, like where they stay where they are in the country compared to like 50 years ago. Like interstate travel was like not a thing, or at least people didn't move to like different states or whatnot. Uh, and that could be just because, with your phone you can, theoretically like live anywhere, like you can see what's going on outside of your state. Before your phone, if you wanted to see the world, you actually had to go out and see the world. You know what I mean? So it kind of makes sense that more people would be traveling, you know, pre-phone, pre-internet. I've just been ripping ass this whole time. I really, I'm so sorry if you can hear that. It's just absolutely disgusting. But yeah, I mean, without the internet, without phones, or not without phones, but without smartphones, I should say, because you had telephones. People, they were able to look at your calls and see who you were calling. Yeah, it wasn't until they tapped your phone that they could listen to conversations, which is you need a warrant for that, right? You know, you, there should be a warrant to look, at my internet, transactions. But you voluntarily give that up because you're buying something on Amazon. Your convenience, you're paying for the convenience with your information as well as monetarily. You're giving up your information for free, and that's arguably more valuable than, the birthday presents you're buying on Amazon. You know what I mean? It's like, you should receive something back for that, just for the risk. Not even, it's not a real risk, but just how scary all of this data is. Like when it's aggregated together like that, like the possibility of, I guess it would be risk of, if someone, just the level of invasion of privacy. Because if you allow people to exchange this data, you are allowing the ability for someone to paint a really detailed picture of your life. That possibility is real, and it's like these large companies are able to do this, and it's an invasion of privacy, and you should be compensated for it because you can't bring down the whole system, right? I mean, it's the global economy. It's the only way this shit works. But we are entitled to some kind of give back. You know what I mean? Because like I said, I mean, you take in all this data, all this, and you tie it back to one person, and it's like, yeah, I know your entire life. I can see how you live. I know what you do. I know how you think. I know who you vote for. I probably know I know what your interests are because, I have your Facebook information. I know what you like and dislike. I know what you like on Instagram. I know what you like on Twitter. I know what shows you watch. I know who you call. I know your social circle. I know your friends. I know your daily commute. I know what you buy. I know your credit score. I know your current loans right now. I know your occupation. You know, you really kind of just know an entire person just based off their online data. You know, that's scary that people don't think about that. It's what else? I mean, what else do you have? What else do you have outside of these things that is private to you? That's a real question. That's you know, that's important. A lot of the things you think, you know, would be private. It's like you don't know I think this way. It's like, well, yeah, I can infer that, you know, based on your I can infer what you like. I can infer, you know, I can infer your secrets, you know. It's like I mean, do you really even have secrets anymore? Are secrets even a thing? If you look, you know, if you zoom out big enough and have enough assets and resources, is anyone really, you know, hidden? I looking at this, I don't think so. I really don't. Unless you completely cut off for a long time. A long time. No internet, no phone. I mean, you could have an address, but no credit card, you know, purely cash. It's and you'd have to live like that for, probably for a long time. Like years, like probably like 5 years. I would say 5 years. 5 years of no anything going on because a lot can happen in 5 years. So that's enough time to be like he could be a different person. You know, that's yeah, that's crazy. I feel like that's a good argument. But I feel like it would also just get people to be like, "Fuck the internet." And it's like, no, the internet's a great thing. It is a great thing. You know, it allows you to learn and communicate and connect with people, and you know, but it, I mean, people are really sad. You know, people are saying, you know, this is the most isolated people are. You know, people don't have friends. You know, people aren't talking with other people. People are scared of other people because it's, you know, becoming a more violent landscape, or at least people feel like it's more violent. You know, I don't know what the actual data is behind that, but it's who knows? You know, it's a big question. You know, what do we use the internet for besides convenience and entertainment? You know, for online shopping and Netflix. You know what I mean? Like what else? I look up stuff. I do shit like this. You know, I research. I code. I make websites. You know, I like building online tools. But you know, what is the you know, what does an average person use it for besides you know social media? Again, entertainment and convenience. You know, Netflix or Dunkin'. You know, McDonald's, Amazon. You know, anything you can buy online. You know, shopping. I don't know. I don't know what other purpose it serves. But that's why it's valuable. I mean, it connects. I mean, there are no borders on the internet. You know, there's different domains. You know, .com, .eu, .uk, whatever the fuck, whatever the foreign domains are. I don't know. I never looked into that. But yeah, that's crazy. That is crazy to think about. Hmm. And speaking of making a digital footprint, I have to go grocery shopping. I have to go grocery shopping and start doing laundry, getting ready for the work. God damn, I gotta get ready for the work week tomorrow. That sucks. I gotta get back to real life. You know, no more. I might do this during the week. Who knows? I go to bed at like 7 o'clock. You know, you saw here I was live at like 7. You know, I got up at like 5 today, and it's my day off. So you know, I get out of work at 5, get home 5:30, and it's like you know I want to make dinner and lay down. But I don't know. I'll think about it. I could go live in the morning, do a cheeky 1 hour stream before work at 5 a.m., 5 to 6. That's usually like my downtime, but I would be like straight out of bed, like you know, completely groggy. Uh, Plus, I want to go to the gym in the morning, so I want to start working on that. But yeah, yeah, it's a big one. And you can see why it would be pretty large. It's hard. We need to get we need to get actual insights into how these brokers operate. If only we could get a consultation, like a consultation from one of these brokers and be like, do you have like a marketplace where I could see what data is available? Like, do you advertise your data sets? That would be a good thing to look for, you know, see what they have, what the process looks like for acquiring data. Do some research that way. Because then we can figure out if, you know, having a federal marketplace, you know, exist, you know, I don't know if we divvy that out to the state level. That seems reasonable. Every state is responsible for standing up their data marketplace, and any businesses in that state or registered in that state has to you know, sell their data through the marketplace if they're going to sell their data. You know, companies that are like, we don't sell our data. Plus, how do you monitor that? How do you enforce that? That's another real question. How do you track that? You know, because what stops someone from emailing a you know, a data broker and being like, hey, you want this? You want this data on the low? How do you enforce that? You got to monitor the internet, and maybe that's a good thing. You know, maybe that's a good thing. You know, maybe that becomes part of you know, getting a domain and, you know, establishing yourself as an entity. Maybe that's part of the whole opt-in process for you know, that we were talking about. Like, you opt in your device, you know, because you have to register as an LLC or something. You know, you have to register with your state if you want to become a business. You know, maybe that's just extra information you provide. Be like, we also, you know, we control these domains. You know, no, I consent to having, you know, the traffic in and out of this domain or with associated email accounts, you know, being monitored for, you know, exchanging of data, you know, outside of the marketplace. You know, that would be a great way to spy on foreign adversaries, for damn sure. Yeah, I mean, if a because we want to have foreign countries doing business in the United States. We want more business in the United States. And I think that would align perfectly with, okay, foreign adversary wants to establish businesses. We're going to watch the shit out of, you know, the communications coming in and out of your business. You know, we're going to see where you're selling, where you're sending that data. And it's like, if that's going back to the homeland, we're going to know what you're giving. And then we're going to have proof, you know? So maybe that's a legitimate argument, is like, when you register for an LLC or whatever with your state, you have to agree, like, okay, we're not going to sell data, but, you know, to enforce that, we're going to tell you this is the domains we have, these are the email addresses associated with those domains. And then if there's a data leak through an employee doing their private email, well, that's you know, that's stealing from the company. One, you know, that's you know, that's its own thing, unless it's, you know, the company doing it as an individual. Then the the people would have a right to know, especially if they say they're not selling their data. And that's the thing, that would be the distinction, right? It would be like, you know, if a company was, you know, collecting data but not selling it, they could say that to their customers, be like, we don't sell your data. We collect it, but we don't sell it. Uh, then they don't have to, you know, register with the marketplace, the federal marketplace for their state, you know, that their state marketplace for data collection, but they still get monitored. You know, it's like, we still make sure you don't exchange data through this domain. But if someone else leaks that data, then that's, you know, that's a concern for your customers, and that should be exposed. But I don't know how that plays out in real life. I don't know if there's like whistleblowers or something that's like, oh, this person, leaked data. He exfiltrated data from a company and sold it. I don't know if that ever happens. I don't know if anyone ever does that. Uh, but yeah, yeah. Hopefully the stream was good in terms of quality, not like content, but like quality of the actual stream itself. But no, this is good. I think for 2 hours having like this general idea, uh, language, general idea. Uh, this would just be the main proposal. There must be an attempt to associate every record in exchange to an individual or entity so that a fraction of the payment for the exchange can be allocated as payment to the pool of individuals and entities that provided that information. The payment to individuals and entities that make up the set of information being exchanged is defined as the rate for the individuals or entities assumed attestation to the validity of their portion of the information provided. Validity of their portion of the information provided should just be exchanged. Because again, it's just focusing on the information that's in transit, that's trading hands and we're saying it's their portion of the information exchanged. And then we give that right to the states to be like, you can choose the rates for what type of data is exchanged. The going rates for attestation, be like, these people get this fraction of that. Say you determine the overall percentage of that exchange that it's like every exchange of data has 1% of its gross cost coming out as a tax for the people that are involved in it, and then you break up that 1% between the individuals and be like, well, you say it's 1% of this exchange, and this data set contains uh, geographic data or whatnot. So you do some other math to calculate. Okay, well, it's 30%, location data, 30%, phone numbers, 10%, public records, shopping habit, whatever, however it breaks down, and you determine the rates for those different categories, and then make totals for where these people show up and how many times they show up and what parts and what their data is. The states control all of those. Breaking down the numbers, how much they want to adjust it. Uh, but we'll write down something for that too. Yeah, the fact that health information is sold is fucking crazy. It's crazy because it's sold in my state and it's sold by the government. It's fucking absurd. It's just yeah, and it's cheap too. It's so cheap. It's it's almost appalling. You know, they gatekeep to it, so you gotta have a real interest for it, and you gotta prove to be not a bad actor. But I mean, you could fucking lie. It's easy to lie. You know, but it's fucking crazy. It's crazy. What kind of data is valuable? I think all data, everything that they listed here was valuable. You know, an individual. On all categories. Kind of like that little rant I went on earlier where it's like you went to get coffee and I know where you were. I know what route you take. I know what, advertising's in your area. I know who you voted for, and I know who you work for, and I know the car, and I know the car you drive, and I know how many loans you have, and I know what you like and what you don't like based on your social media profiles. I know how many friends you have. I know how many I know what you talk about. I don't know if they leak, if they sell like DMs between accounts. I don't know if that's like for sale, but it's like I know where you shop. I know what you buy. I know what you subscribe to. I know I know if you're a part of an email listing. I know who you're listening to. Yeah, just kind of do that rant, really boil it down, and just like do one person. Just do one person and be like, "This is Bob, all right?" And we are a data broker, and we carry. Bob is, like there's a million Bobs. Yeah, there's a million Bobs, but we're gonna focus on this Bob just because we're bored. For an example, we don't care about Bob. We don't care about Bob at all. We care about the million Bobs. We care about a million Bobs, but one Bob we don't give a shit about. It's about numbers. Uh, but yeah, that'd be a fun exercise to do. And it's like yeah, it's too big to fail. It's too big to go back on now. You know, unless unless we're going for a recession and we just want to tear it down anyways. Be like, let's build back, but let's not use it this. Let's not build back this way. I think it's too much of a national security risk. Uh, too much of an issue. Too much of a concern. I don't know. I really don't know. I don't know. I have a master's in computer science at a good school, but I'm no expert by any means in like any field for that matter. I'm a generalist and a pretty shitty one at that. So a lot of this is just shooting from the hip and using assumptions. But I'm speculating. I'm speculating on a lot of this, except for the stuff that I called out and I can pull up specifically. But you know, it's pretty important. And it's a fun exercise. I'm having fun doing this. I hope I plan on looking back on these. I should probably save these uh, as a research. Put them publicly. Maybe make a YouTube account. That could be that could be fun. Just to archive all this shit. But yeah, yeah, that'd be really cool. Might do that. But it's 10 o'clock. Coffee's just about gone. I think this is a good stopping point for today. Uh, I said we were going to build an outline, but I really just wrote down one thing about the main proposal, some little bit of research about this stuff, and we had a weird tangent about about Vermont, relating to data brokers and consumer protections. I'll probably read this offline and see. I could help answer some of the questions that we had earlier, where it was like we need a consultation to figure out what it's like to view the data for sale and to actually go through with one of these sales, uh, and see what kind of logistics are behind it. Almost time for football. Almost time for football. Ooh, yeah, a fire does sound good. I was gonna say a fire sounds good, but yeah, my parents are having a fire right now. I think I might go have a fire with them. That sounds like fun. All right, we will we will leave it at that. All right. I gotta go grocery shop. Gotta do laundry. I gotta do dishes. My kitchen's a fucking nightmare right now. Probably light a candle. Oh yeah. Yeah, 2 hours, 20 minutes. That's not bad. I'll take that. So it's a good start. Good start. We'll see. I don't know if I'm gonna be live during the week. Maybe Friday. I mean, like maybe Friday. Depends on how I feel. I get paid this week, so that'll get me through it. But yeah. Until then, is this still going? Oh, I paused it. But yeah, yeah. Well, I'll probably archive this stuff. I'll put it somewhere. I'll put it somewhere because it would be good to look back on some of these moments to highlight, just for my own research to stay consistent, with this. Uh, I'm a big fan of notes. So, all right, I'll leave it at that. We're gonna go pick up my house, pick up my life, do a little Sunday reset. It was a good morning. It was a good, power hour there in the morning. So, yeah. All right. Take care. Be safe. Make your bed. Yeah, make your bed. All right, I'll see you around.